Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I've got 5 more board game rules mistakes for you. These are board game rules mistakes that I've made and taught incorrectly to others, or the rules that were taught incorrectly to me by others. We're going to talk about the implications of these rules mistakes, and then what the actual rule is, and now how the games have been playing after implementing the new rules change. I'm curious to hear if you've made any of these rules mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, so I'm curious to see if you've actually made these and see if maybe you learned from this video. And if you've made any recent board game rules mistakes, let me know down in the comments below so that I can learn from you as well. I make them all the time, so I'm always open to see potential oopses. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure that you do. It is the best way to help us grow. And for those of you already subscribed, thank you so much for the continuous support. Let's talk about 5 more board game rules mistakes. The first game here is Spires and Hildegard. We actually just recently did a gameplay video of this on our channel. It's 3 parts, and in that first part is where I actually learned this rules mistake. A commenter let me know, so I'm happy to share it here. Now, Spires and Hildegard has you playing in this autumnal scenery. You are going to be going from skill test to skill test as an adventurer delivering a package. Not getting into any spoilers here, but you're doing a lot of these skill tests where you're going to be rolling dice, trying to accumulate bullseyes based on the enemies that you're fighting. You can see here on this right side that you're trying to get all of those bullseye faces that are white, and you can use them in any combination to achieve that bullseye target in that upper right area. Now, in Spires and Hildegard, your dice, in addition to the red ones with the bullseye faces, you're also going to roll a wild shot die at the end of each of those sets, and that'll add some sort of symbol to your roll. Either a bullseye, an extra one, awesome, a face that says you can change one of the other faces to whatever you want, reroll, or nothing, and sometimes an X symbol, which means you have to get rid of one of your other red dice. And that can be pretty unfortunate when you have 2 complete bullseyes, you get the X, and you actually lose one. Now, the rule that I was playing incorrectly was at the end of each shot dice, I thought it was optional if you had to roll a wild shot die. And that is not the case. Every single time you roll your dice, you have to use a wild shot die. This has pretty big implications because sometimes that exact scenario can happen where you get the X and you lose out on a bullseye that maybe would have pushed you into victory. So making it so that you have to roll it every time always gives you a risk that you may unfortunately miss, or heck, you may get some awesome extra bonus for getting that additional bullseye that you weren't accounting for. So thanks again for the commenters on those videos, and if you're interested in checking them out, go check them out on the channel. Let me know how I did. So that is the first rules mistakes. Every single time you take a skill test, you have to roll a wild shot die for Spires and Hildegard. My second game here is one that I've played a lot, and this is pretty embarrassing because this is a core rules error that I've been making here. Blood on the Clocktower is one of my most played games, period. It's one of my favorite games ever. It's actually my favorite game right now. And spoilers, it's incredible. Blood on the Clocktower is one of the best games ever. And Blood on the Clocktower here is a social deduction game where you have a storyteller that's running this scenario where they have a good team and an evil team. The good team is trying to eliminate a demon, and the evil team is trying to keep their demon alive for that final 2 characters. You have your own special abilities and powers. Everybody is constantly playing, and you're using these abilities to gain information and try to make amazing plays to ensure your team's victory. Now, the rule that I got wrong in this is a huge one, and it has to do with alignment changes. Now, what do I mean by this? This is when a character switches from being on one team to another team. For example, the goon here has an ability where every night the first player that chooses the goon with their ability becomes drunk, so their effect doesn't work until dusk, and then you become their alignment. So if a good player chooses the good goon, then the goon stays good. But if a bad player chooses the good goon, the goon makes that player's effect not work, and then all of a sudden, the goon is now an evil character. They're on the bad team, and they can keep on switching based on how often they are selected by the other characters. The rules mistake that I was doing incorrectly was that when characters changed alignment, I wouldn't tell that character. I thought it was like a puzzle for the goon to figure out who was picking them, so they figured out which team they were on by the end of it. That's not the case at all. I was actually playing an online version of this game with Table Knots. Shout out to that channel. Awesome community there. And one of the people playing with us waited until the end of the session and then let me know this error. I was really thankful that they were able to roll with my rulings on this and asking for it. So it was a bit of a different game for them. So I did appreciate that they rolled with the ruling, and then they let me know afterwards, and that was huge. The fact that you have to let them know. And that's a big deal because that way that player can change their strategy based on the current team that they're aligned with. Now, the crazy thing about this, though, as big and monumental of a rules mistake this is, I don't think it's actually affected any of the games. Not that I can recall, at least any of the games that I've played have not been affected. The games that I've actually played with the goon, an evil player has never actually chosen the goon, which is crazy that that situation has not happened. And one of the characters that actually gets played with a lot in our games is Snake Charmer. I really like this character, so I end up putting it in a lot. The Snake Charmer here, though, every night they pick an alive player, and if they choose the demon, they become the demon, and they switch their alignments. Usually when this happens, the demon knows that they've been picked by the good Snake Charmer, and they assume that they're good. And usually that's what happens. We have not had the instance where a character becomes an evil Snake Charmer and changes, and picks the demon and changes with the demon. So that situation has not arisen yet, but now I am ready for when that happens. So that's a big deal in Blood on the Clocktower, because there are characters that can shift alignments constantly, like the Cultist, or as you saw with the Goon, and you want to always be aware of what team you're playing on. So you definitely are going to be told that, hey, you are now evil, or you are now a good character. Something to be aware of, and one small rule in that rulebook that you can totally miss. It's a big one, though. So thanks again, the Table Nuts community, for helping me out on this one, and these last couple of huge big game sessions of Clocktower I've played completely correctly, so I think I'm good. I've passed all the tests. Oh man, a lot of little rules with all these abilities for Blood on the Clocktower, but oh man, it's worth it. These games are incredible. So that's my number 2 rules mistake. That's when you change alignments in Blood on the Clocktower, you are told when you change the alignments and to what alignment you change to. My third game here is for Arkham Horror, the card game. This one's also a little embarrassing because I've played this game a long time. I feel like this game has been on this video series with Blood on the Clocktower before. In Arkham Horror, the card game, you play as an investigator going around the world, completing different missions, and in the most recent campaign, Scarlet Keys, you are going around the world. You've got this big old map, you're traveling. It's awesome. Scarlet Keys is great so far. And this rules mistake was actually found out during that playthrough of that campaign of Scarlet Keys. Now, in most of the scenarios that you're going to play, you are trying to progress on an agenda, and you're going to do this through gathering clues. You can see this area on the top side here, where there's doom on one side, and then you're going to have some threshold of clues you're usually collecting on the left side. And so this game in particular has you going around the locations, and you are going to investigate to pick up clues. And when you pick up clues, they go into your player area. They're owned by your character. Now, the rule that we got wrong when doing this was, if a player has a clue, they are not allowed to share that clue. We were playing that if you picked up a clue, if you were in the same space as another investigator, you could give them your clues. You could share your notes, share your study. We thought it was thematic. It made sense. But that all changed when we started playing with some of the new cards from Scarlet Keys. My friend Robert and I are playing through it right now, and he's playing Daryl Simmons. And Daryl Simmons has access to a lot of yellow cards. And one of the new archetypes in yellow cards has to do with spending the clues and putting them onto the locations to get additional bonus effects. And we were thinking, oh man, I could get some clues, I could give them to you, and then you could use them to use your ability and get even more value out of the cards that you're playing. Yeah, that's a little too busted, and it definitely is, because it's not a rule. The only time that you're allowed to share clues is when you are spending them as a group to complete something. A lot of those times, the different objective scenarios will say, as a group, you can spend this many. That's when you can sort of share them, but you can never actually give them to another player. Who knows? There may be cards in the future where you can do that, but as for right now, the only way they're getting clues is if you are the one taking that investigate action, using your book value, investigating, and trying to beat that shroud value after diving into that chaos bag. Well, luckily, Daryl Simmons does not have an issue with picking up clues. He's got that 5 book stat, so he's doing a great job on establishing those initial clue gains so that he can do big drop turns. So that is the rules mistake for Arkham Horror, the card game. You cannot share clues between other players. Another game that we've been playing recently is Hansa Teutónica. My friend Dan over at Chairman of the Board recommended that I definitely give this one a try for the big box in particular. I've been playing it quite a bit. I like this game quite a bit. It's really fun. You are doing some route building here. You're putting out cubes onto the map, and you are trying to establish connections at these areas. You can either pick engine building or points whenever you complete one of these tracks, and you'll remove them from your board, and you'll get some bonus. Now, the biggest thing for this game is the player interaction, because you're constantly blocking one another. When I learned this game for the first time, I guess recently, I learned it maybe a really long time ago. My friend Jeff taught me. Thank you, Jeff, for teaching me this game. He taught me again, though, this second time, and in this first initial rules teach, the rule that we were taught was to replace an enemy cube, you must spend 2 cubes of your own. So, for example, I'm blue and I want to replace this red cube here. I need to spend 2 of my own blue cubes to kick that one out. So that was the original rule that we were playing. And the actual rule is when you kick out a cube, the enemy that you're kicking out gets a significant bonus for you doing that. If you kick out an opponent's cube, that enemy actually gets to take that cube plus an additional one from the supply, so one they don't even own yet, and place them onto adjacent paths. So for example, let's go with this example again. I am putting my blue cube, I'm covering up this green cube. That green player, in addition to making me pay extra, they get to take an extra cube from outside the supply and immediately place them on a board connected to that area that they were just kicked out from. So they could put it over there, over here, maybe one there. You can split it up. It's awesome, and it's so powerful. It's a great form of interaction between the players as you're putting out cubes and displacing others. And sometimes it can be great to just place cubes in areas that are really hot spots so that people can push each other out and you can get even more value. It's an awesome system, and it makes so much sense now that we played it, but whoa, that first time we played it, it was such a boring game, honestly. It was so straightforward. You're like, okay, why would you not just do this thing over and over again? Yeah, I'm obviously going to just get more actions. You can't really stop me. It was honestly not that fun. It was like, wow, this is the game that's super hyped. This is fine, I guess. It's so boring. But as soon as you introduced that awesome form of interaction of getting additional value when you are displaced, awesome. The game singed. It made so much sense. I enjoy this one quite a bit, and I'm so happy that we know the official rules now. So that's Hansa Teutónica. When your cubes are displaced, you not only get to replace that cube immediately on the board, but you get an extra one from the supply. The last game for this video is Encyclopedia. This has you playing as characters who are actually creating the first encyclopedia. You'll have all of these different animals that you're going to be researching. You'll watch them in their habitat and then get all of this information. And when you're ready, you'll get to publish journals about them. And you do this by accumulating cubes on the cards and then placing those cards into appropriate scoring areas. Now, when we played this for the first time, we were getting cards that had matching symbols, which makes sense because when you take a journal action, you're going to pick one of your animals as your reference animal, and then any other animals that are of the same type or have the same similar traits, you can also score at the same time. And this is still true. So for example, say that we pick this bird up here. It is a bird, so if I had one of these other birds with these bird symbols, I could also cash in those points if I had the matching cube on them. And that's the whole point of getting the cubes, is that you can unload them all in a single journal action. Now, you can do this for each different type of that reference animal. So with this bird, once again, I could use the bird, I could use the omnivore, the water area, and the snowy environment. As long as different animals share those things, I could also unload those cubes from those animals. So the whole goal here is to try to collect cards so that you can do a single unloading action. The things that we played incorrectly, though, were twofold. The first rule was that when you did this reference animal here, we thought when you journaled, you had to use every single one of your animals. Each time you did this, you hoped that you were getting all of these matching animals, because otherwise you might lose them. So that was the first thing, was that we thought you had to use all your animals. That is not the case. You don't actually have to use all your animals, so you can collect them as they come up and then try to make a bunch of different sets. Now, the second rules mistake that we got wrong actually had to do with what's called, I think it's called type 0 scoring or type 1 scoring. This basically means that at the end of your scoring actions, generally you're going to be placing cubes into scoring areas, but you also get to take that actual card and put it face down as scoring as well. Whatever your reference animal is, that determines the initial type of the animal. So for example, this one here is in Asia. So all of these are Asia animals. And so when you cash them in, you're going to be able to cache the rest of the animals as well. The color we thought primarily was just for set collection at the end, which it is for, but the actual rule is that if you use your reference animal, you're only allowed to bank those additional cards, flip the cards that are of the same nation. So yes, you could use an action where you're using all of these different birds from these different countries, but if they aren't actually from that reference animal's countries, you're going to lose that card at the end of the round. You'll still get to remove the cubes from it, so you can be pretty efficient with your actions, removing all these cubes at the same time, but you're not going to get any of the additional bonuses for doing this in the form of that set collection at the end. So at the end of the game, you're going to add up all of the cards from the different regions that you have that are the same color, and you'll score a lot of points if you get at least 4 of them, and they scale up the more that you get. You pair those with some other cards as well, so you're trying to get a lot of the same color of cards. And so yes, you may get some points now, but it may hurt at the end of the game. So a little weird to explain right now, but the big thing here is when you play Encyclopedia, you are not forced to use all of your animals during these journal actions. You can save some back, which means that you can plan for future turns. And then in addition, if you do make a set and you are ready to flip your cards over, you're finished with your journal action, you've used your different animals, you're only allowed to save the cards that share the same type as the animal that you picked as your reference animals. That's the animal that you're basing all of your other scoring off of. So that's Encyclopedia, the last rules mistake. Whew, and that is it. Those are all of the rules mistakes that I've been making recently. I'm curious to hear what rules mistakes you've been making. Have you made any of these mistakes yourselves? Have I illuminated any of you? Or are you just like, Mackenzie, what are you doing? You get these games right. That's what I'm working on, doing it constantly and trying my best. But thank you so much for watching. Curious to hear your thoughts and what you think of these games in general. Thank you again for watching. SideGame Strong.